through to Chamber Web TV. These are one-on-one interviews with candidates for the upcoming June 12th provincial election. And with me today in the Chamber studios is our own NDP candidate for Cambridge, Bobbi Stewart. Bobbi, how are you?
I am very well, Greg. Thank you for having me.
It's so nice of you to come in and sit down and speak with us about topics of interest, and I'm sure you've got lots of interest in this campaign as well. Not just from being a candidate, but you know, you've got a lot of experience in the political field, so you know, you're obviously interested no matter what type of an election it is.
Very much am.
You're just
all levels. Love politics on all levels.
Well, as you know, we've got some questions we want to ask you from a chamber point of view, and these are questions that are not meant to be partisan. These are questions for our membership that are business owners or work in businesses who say these are the things that are of interest to them. I know some will look at it and say, "Oh, that's maybe partisan," but give me a break. It's a Chamber of Commerce. We're supposed. While I would describe the Chamber of Commerce as a community organization, obviously we feel that a strong and healthy and vibrant and prosperous business community will certainly go a long way in helping all of the aspects of our community, even the social fabric, and strengthen it as well, because we want businesses to be profitable and give some of those profits back to the community.
Absolutely.
So anyway, my first question, when the Chamber comes calling, because we will, and this is something that we've been harping on I've spoken to your leader about it, I've spoken to all the leaders about it, and this is something we've been on for a long time. So we really would like to see fairness on tendering in municipal jurisdictions and school boards for all construction employers. And we talked about this a little bit before. You understand the issue probably as well as anybody. Michael Harris, a Conservative member of the opposition, brought forward at the end of last year, called the Fair and Open Tendering Act. It was not supported by your party, nor was it supported by the government. And so it dies. All we were wanting, or what we were hoping, is that it would get at least moved to committee. And because I think we're all grown-ups and we all recognize that nothing's perfect in the first draft. We need to have a kick it around a little bit. So, you know, you and I had a little conversation about this, and maybe for the folks watching, we'd just say that part of the issue is that the Ontario Labour Relations Board just made an announcement that they ruled in favor of the union, saying that municipalities and school boards could be called construction employers. And we all know, if we banged on doors and said, "Do you think your municipality, do you think the city of Cambridge is a construction company?" I don't think there'd be one person that would say. So what do you think? How should we handle when I come banging on your door, Bobbi, and say, "Okay, now's the time. The rubber's got to meet the road." What do you really feel? How do you feel about it?
When I read about this issue, first of all, I found it extremely complex. And first of all, I mean, I believe very strongly in fair tendering. I believe very strongly in hiring unionized employees whenever possible. They're well trained, they've completed their apprenticeships, the wages are good, and I think it's obviously really important to have good wages, and we don't want to have this kind of race to the bottom with really low wages. That doesn't help anybody, it doesn't help the economy. So if people aren't making good money, they can't put it in the economy. However, the way you've described it, it really sounds like a bit of a practical issue. And I know with Andrea Horvath and our platform, we're looking at, you know, we're maintaining our social justice issues, we're maintaining our support, obviously, of all labor, but certainly of unions. But we also have to be practical, and what we do has to make sense on a practical level. So the way you've described it in terms of, well, the municipality can't be considered a construction company. It seems to me that it would make sense to take that bill and have another look at it. And again, do some negotiating around this, as long as we are aware this is not about driving wages down, this is about what's fair, this is about what's practical, and this is about giving everyone a chance.
And you know what? That's all the Chamber would care about, is having a look at it and seeing if there are inequities, because I would think, you know, every party and every politician knocks on the door when they're campaigning and says, elect me because I believe in fairness and equality across the platform. And so you know, nobody wants to elect a body or a government that's going to go and then rule in an unfair mode. And all we're saying is, have a look at it. If it is unfair, fix it.
Yeah.
If it's not unfair, well, then it's not unfair.
Yeah.
But we believe it. We think on the surface of what we're hearing, it's unfair.
Yeah. So have another look at it. Get the parties together, have another look at it.
So when you're elected
Makes
MPP for Cambridge, I can count on you to go to your leader and say, I want to have a look at this.
Yeah, you can.
This is going to be a very short and quick interview. I can see that.
You don't think I'm going to agree with everything?
I know, but we're going to have a great conversation.
Yes, we are.
Okay, so believe it or not, no other sector of society except business, now this is coming from me, produces money, wealth, or opportunity. Okay? So, I always use this wonderful example. If you had a machine in your basement that you got to go down once a day and crank the machine and it spit out $1,000 bill, what would you do to protect that machine? You do everything so that every morning when you went down, you could crank out that $1,000 bill. Well, in society, that's what business is. Business cranks out the money.
Yes.
They produce all of the wealth that there is for government to spend, for people to spend. So, with that in mind, what is an NDP government in the province of Ontario, and your leader, Andrea Horwath, and you tagging right along beside her as Cambridge's MPP, what are you going to do to inspire economic prosperity and growth and investment into our province, more particularly in Cambridge?
First of all, I'm not convinced that just business creates growth. I mean, government creates money. Government banks create money by, you know, the government prints the money.
Yep.
Banks give people loans. So that's all, in a sense, contributing to that wealth. So just a little bit of an added piece that I'd like to say about that. But we have a good job creation plan. Cambridge has been suffering for a long time. We are a manufacturing town. We've lost a lot of jobs, you know, factory jobs, textiles. I remember I worked at St. Luke's Place for a while, and I was amazed at the number of women that I met that had worked in the textile industry over in Hespeler.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
and so we are suffering. So we have to get those jobs back, and part of it, because of the global market, we've lost a lot of jobs, and we have to find a way to create. So what we want to do in terms of small business, we have a job creation program whereby we would give an employer up to $5,000 per employee with a new employee. So that's going to, with a new employee,
So
you would get a grant of
every
10%.
small business who hires a new employee,
Yes, would get, I believe it's just one.
Yes.
It's 10% of their salary, but up to $5,000 for a new employee. Another thing that we're going to be doing, and this is going to affect business across the board, is through the Minister of Savings and Accountability. Andrea Horwath is going to create this ministry, and we are going to look at waste. So we're going to look at the hydro system. We're going to look at the fact that back in late 90s, 2000, in what appeared to be an effort to privatize hydro, we had one hydro company, then we have four. So we have four hydro companies, and they all have CEOs that are making well over $1 million, and they're getting bonuses. So we want to get that down to one or two companies, and that's going to cut a lot of waste. As you know, hydro rates have gone up. We do need to build infrastructure that's going to cost money, but we have to cut that waste. So that's one thing that's going to happen, and that is going to help get the hydro bills down. We're going to take the HST off hydro, so that will help, you know, residents and businesses alike. Those are just a couple of the initiatives. In terms of manufacturing, we have a manufacturing incentive grant of up to $250 million over 2 years, where what we have found is the Ministry of Finance in Ontario has discovered that over the last 35 years we are way behind in our investment in machinery for companies. And so if you buy a lathe for $40,000, you get a $4,000 rebate on that. So that's going to help manufacturing, which is going to help people will have the money to hire, they'll produce, there'll be a market, and that will help.
well, there's an incentive to invest.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. And that's where business is created. All part of the GDP is business investment.
What about the, you know, what really struck me, and I had the opportunity to have Andrea on our radio show a couple of months back, and she actually had spoken at a chamber luncheon at the same time, and she had talked about this, you know, there was widely a concern about the province just arbitrarily increasing minimum wage, but she came out with a pretty novel way of dealing with minimum wage, and because predominantly, I guess, let's be realistic about it, most companies don't pay minimum wage. They pay more than minimum wage. So the ones that are really going to get hurt are the real small little retail type operations who have to pay minimum wage because they can't afford anything else. So they would be hurt. Well, your leader's got an interesting plan to deal with that.
Well, up to $12 an hour, but up to 2016. It won't happen immediately.
Yes.
It'll happen over time.
And then she's
we'll
working on giving a tax break to small businesses in order to accommodate that added cost of employees.
That's right.
So, and I think actually she had mentioned to me that in the province of Manitoba, there is no small business tax. It's zero. And that's how they've been able to raise the minimum wage and deal with some of the issues of small businesses.
Now, we are lowering that business tax. Thank you for reminding me.
Yes.
From 4.5 to 3%
Yes.
on small business.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
I think that happens right away.
That is going to happen right away.
Yes.
And in fact, when we were so blessed to have Andrea come to Galt a week ago Friday. And it was lovely because as soon as she came, one of the businesses was a beauty salon. A woman came out of the door, started talking, and she had this lovely conversation with her at the door. And that's what came out. This woman asked, well, what about minimum wage? What if I can't afford that? And so then Andrea explained about the other tax breaks.
And I think that was a pretty creative solution because I think, initially when you've got a tiny little business and you can only afford to pay minimum wage, and then the government comes along and says, well, I think we'll just increase minimum wage on June the 1st or July the 1st or whatever it is. Right away, you look around and say, well, wait a minute.
That's a shock.
That I can't adjust that fast. And so I think, this type of argument that Andrea's putting forward makes, certainly a lot more sense than just arbitrarily.
It makes it easier to handle it.
Because these are largely small businesses who run on very thin margins.
Absolutely.
But anyway,
and
that's
we got to help the working poor as well.
Speaking about helping business, energy costs. Oh my goodness.
Boy.
They're not just driving businesses out of business, they're driving businesses out of the province. And along with those businesses are jobs.
Yeah.
I saw recently an industrial, 25 employees, saw their hydro bill.
Yeah.
They used $12,000 worth of electricity in the month, which just seems like a lot.
Yeah.
But their bill was $62,000.
Wow.
By the time you add in the global recovery or adjustments, by the time you add in all of the taxes and everything. So they use $12,000 worth of electricity, and they get an invoice for $62,000 because of all of these other costs. I think that, certainly we can come up with some ideas on how to do that.
Absolutely.
Get rid of all the high-paid bureaucracy that's
Absolutely.
there. Maybe throw them all into one room and say, every third person's
This is
out.
your last caviar. That's it. No more.
And also, I think in reality, when you look into the general population, very few people have the multi-platinum benefit packages that some of those senior executives have, the retirement benefits that they have. Like, it's just, we were talking about fair and open tendering. We should be talking about fair and open government and how it operates too. What would an Andrea Horwath government do for the province of Ontario?
In terms of saving, or in terms of watching
hydro,
the dollar.
How do we?
The hydro piece, as I say, we'll take the HST off.
Yep.
We'll look at the top. We'll look at getting back to 1 or 2 companies as opposed to 4. We will look at another thing that we want to.
So are you talking about, is that OPG, OPA,
Yes,
and
yes.
Hydro One?
Yeah,
And
I think there's 4.
yeah, well, it's I don't know.
We need to get it down to 1 or 2 because that's gonna take away a lot of that waste. The other thing is we're selling off a lot of our nuclear to the States for a song, and losing money, and then they're buying it. We're buying it back from them.
Well, as I understood it with this gentleman who showed me the bill,
Yes.
was that this global adjustment is that when the province of Ontario sends electricity to Michigan and actually pays Michigan to take the electricity,
Yes.
that's what he's got to pay for. He's got to pay for the fact that we had to pay somebody to take our residual electricity.
Yes, I'm told we have an abundance, an overabundance
Well,
of nuclear energy.
I don't know
so
why
we're selling it off cheaply.
Why do you have to pay somebody to take it?
Yeah.
You know what?
Exactly.
It's cheaper for me
Yeah.
if you just let it disappear, because that's what'll happen.
Yeah.
You know, don't pay somebody.
It doesn't
to take
make
it.
sense.
Just let it go away.
It does not make sense.
No,
And
I just
it has
can't
to
believe
be
it.
very carefully.
It almost seems like, Bobby, that what they're doing is saying, well, we're producing too much electricity right now.
Yes.
We don't want to just let it go away and have people look at it and say, oh, well, you're producing too much electricity. You can cut some jobs because we don't need that electricity. It almost seems like that's what they're trying to do. It's protecting, you know, the old adage, well, let's spend it or let's use it right now because we'll never be able to get it back.
Like the old government budgets.
Yeah,
I can remember
yeah,
that.
exactly.
Spend it. It's in your budget. You don't
Spend
spend
it.
it, you won't get enough.
That's
a horrible way to go.
ridiculous. It's just ridiculous.
Yep.
And I think,
It's wasteful.
you know, I think, you know, it's bad enough at home. I have a cottage up in Conestoga Lake, and this past winter got a invoice for $263. We hardly go there in the wintertime, so there's virtually nothing on. But it was a hydro bill for $263 or something like that, and I think there was like $62 worth of hydro used. The rest of it was all transmission costs and or what do they call it? A delivery charge, you know, debt retirement, all of that kind of stuff. And all of a sudden it adds up to like 3 times as much as you actually use. So, you know,
crazy.
I think something's really got to be hardcore looked at with this.
I agree. And there was something else that we were going to do. Take off the debt. There's another
Debt
piece
retirement
that,
charge?
Yes. That we are apparently going to eliminate.
Yes. And of course eliminating the HST.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
That's a given.
Absolutely.
What about, you know, speaking of
sorry, one more thing. And we're going to give the Ontario Energy Board enhanced powers to take exceptional impacts on consumers. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
This is about natural gas bills. That's actually not going to make us any money. That's going to be flexible when we look at the cost to the consumer. Okay.
Yes. I think it's that I can remember. I was a number of years ago. I was really hammering on taking the tax off of tax on a liter of gas. Still unsuccessful at doing that. I've been fighting the federal government to do that. I actually asked Premier McGuinty when he was in power in a small meeting, and I asked him to look into that. You know, because it is a federal issue to some degree.
Yes.
And he said, I didn't even know that happens. And, well, what happens is there's a flat tax for federal government. There's a flat tax for provincial government in the price of a liter of gas.
Okay.
So just because a liter of gas goes up and down doesn't mean there's more tax. It's the same amount of tax, except HST is applied after all of that.
After.
So we actually pay HST on the provincial and federal tax that's on there. So that's tax on tax. You wouldn't be allowed to do that. Only the government could do that.
Yeah.
I couldn't tax.
No.
Only the government
Only the government's
can do
doing it. Well, Andrea's also talking about taking the HST off gas.
Yeah, well, that...
And she's also talking about having a weekly cap on gas prices.
Well, we had a 7% increase in the price of a liter of gas when HST came in. You know, to some degree, I like I like that type of tax. It's a value-added tax. It's up front. Everybody knows what it is. So government can't hide behind it and sneak the tax in the back door.
Right.
I like that. We can regulate it because if I don't want to pay too much in tax, I just don't buy. So instead of buying a BMW, I'll buy a Volkswagen. And then I don't pay as much tax.
Right.
That's okay to be upfront like that. But I think when you start to apply it to some things that we gotta have, like energy.
Exactly.
And I think Andrea is all over that.
She is.
You know, there are things we have to buy. We have to have electricity.
Exactly.
We have to buy gasoline. You know, we gotta.
It's getting too expensive.
We have to buy
all the basics.
Natural gas or oil for our houses. You know, and taxes start mounting on that stuff, and it just becomes almost unbearable. But interesting. Infrastructure is critically important to everything. Roads,
Transit.
trains, rail systems, you know, all of it's great stuff. We find, though, in Ontario and probably in Canada, we don't use rail quite as much as they do in Europe. It's a wonderful thing. I think it's great, and it would be nice, ideal to have high-speed rail going across the country, but, you know, the reality of it is we probably won't adapt to it quite as quickly as they do in Europe. However,
No.
if you go to a retail store here, everything you need to buy at that retail store or want to buy has to come on a truck. So we got to do roads. What
do we
does
do
the
about that?
NDP and the Andrea Horwath government feel about investing in our provincial infrastructure from roads all the way through to rail?
Yep, yep. For the roads, we definitely have a permanent road fund, which will be used to build new roads and to maintain and fix the old roads. There'll be a focus in Northern Ontario on that as
Yes.
well. I mean, it's all across
Yep.
Ontario, but there will be a focus.
Northern Ontario, what do they have? The Trans-Canada Highway, that's
Yeah,
about it.
exactly, exactly. So there's definitely going to be some investment in fixing, repairing roads, and we're going to widen 60 kilometers of roads. And again, there'll be quite a bit of that will be in Northern Ontario.
Yep.
We have to look at transit.
Yep.
I don't know if you heard CBC Radio, but Kathleen Wynne has said that she is going, that there's a chance that Cambridge would be able to have light rail, that the provincial government would pay for light rail to Cambridge.
Oh.
As you know, we're talking about light rail. It's a big issue.
Well, they didn't
Cambridge at this
pay
point isn't
all
gonna
of
get
what
it.
they had promised to in KW.
Well, our comment was, it really feels that we're being told we can buy a ticket to the lottery, that you will be considered. It'll be a fair and equitable process.
We've heard that.
So, but again, it feels like another promise.
We heard that with the, I think for a number of years with the Cambridge Memorial Hospital.
Yes, we
expansion.
did. We're finally going to get that. That's another topic.
But-
we will. So bottom line is, yes, there's going to be money spent on fixing, maintaining, widening roads. Definitely. Like your point about the trucks is well taken.
Yeah,
You
we
know, the
can't-
trains
we
only
gotta
go so
have
far.
trucks.
We don't do that. It's
Yeah.
trucks.
Yep.
And then you're on the 401 and you got gridlock.
Yes.
So, I mean, we have a very, very, very serious transit problem in Ontario.
I
And I look
don't
at
disagree.
Southern Ontario, I really look at that,
Yeah.
around Toronto, around here.
Now, I think your leader, as well as every leader actually, has said they're committed to two-way, all-day GO transit into Kitchener.
Absolutely.
What about GO from Cambridge?
Well, that's what we want. Now, I don't see it in the platform, but if elected, I will definitely be talking to Andrea about that.
I think the city of Cambridge has got a great
We need
plan.
it. We need
it's
it.
very inexpensive to do.
Absolutely. And it's 50 minutes faster from here.
Well,
it means
yeah.
you're not driving. There are people here that drive to Burlington. So
Yeah.
you're still driving. You're still, polluting.
Yep.
You're still taking your car out.
I've always said anybody south of the south of Chicopee in Kitchener, anybody south
Yep.
of there, which
Yep.
would include all of Cambridge, of course, would never use a GO Transit in Kitchener because it'd take you 20 minutes
I
to
know,
get there and
I
then
know.
get on for a
Yeah.
2-hour and
That's
5-minute
right.
ride.
That's right.
Where if it was here, I think everybody from up there would probably come down here because it's a shorter trip into
Yeah, they
downtown.
would. Yeah, they would. They would. I love being so close to the 401.
Mhm.
It's very handy.
Well, and you know what? It's given the time of day.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, there are times of day that are better, but I've been from here to downtown Toronto in 55 minutes.
Yeah. On a good day.
On a good day, right?
Sunday morning.
Yeah, yeah, no question. But there is tremendous amount of gridlock because I've been in that as well,
Absolutely.
where it's taken me 2 hours to
Exactly.
get downtown. But I think from our perspective, we've been lobbying a long time along with the city of Cambridge for GO Transit. here,
Absolutely,
I think-
and I would definitely lobby for that. I was disappointed I didn't see it in our platform.
Mm-hmm.
I saw Kitchener, I didn't see us. Again, it doesn't mean it won't happen.
Yeah.
And we can advocate for that. And also, to answer your question as well, I mean, how do we make it better for the transportation of goods? Again, we've got to get more cars off the road, so that's
Mm-hmm.
why we do need transit. And we have to continue to look at the green economy as well.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, for sure.
I mean,
That's
we-
really in
we-
everybody's platform.
Absolutely. I mean, that's why we're looking at light rail.
Yep.
We know we have to have, sustainable, walkable communities, and this is where the light rail is going to fit in. And it might seem like a dream right now, but we really have to look at this. And I mean, we have to look at this just like climate change. This is all part of
Yeah.
what we've done to our planet, and we have to somehow reverse this.
Much has been said in this election about cutting government jobs, and the Chamber is concerned that there are parties and candidates who believe that the government of the day is 100% efficient. we don't
Okay.
think that the government is 100% efficient. There's a 1.1 million people that work for the provincial government. There's got to be some slop there. We all know that that's not true. However, core mandate of every elected official, as I stated earlier when you and I were talking off camera,
Yes.
that one of the principal duty of an elected official is a fiduciary one, is to be a good steward of the public purse. So we know government's not 100% efficient. Do you believe that a complete review of who does what, as well as a review on salary and benefit levels of government employees, should be done?
That's a big one.
I know. And
That's a hard one for me because I'm not a policeman. I'm a social worker. My social justice. I joined NDP because of my social justice values. However, and I also work in the public sector.
Yeah.
And I believe it's important to be efficient. We need to do our jobs. We don't want to waste. We need to maximum our efficiency and how we use our time. So wherever we are, whether it's in the public sector, private sector, we need to be doing that. Government, we need to be doing that. So to answer your question, I mean, we are creating a minister of savings and accountability.
Right.
So why wouldn't we also
And I
look
think
at
that's what I
how
wanted to
the
get to.
government employees are using their time and their money? I mean, look at the Senate scandals. We've seen a lot of waste. We've seen people breaking rules. That all has to stop. We've seen the gas plant scandal. So I would definitely say there needs to be a closer eye on.
And I was
on
going
what
to
we
ask
do and
you
how we spend our money.
about that, because I feel that could potentially be the individual that could be there responsible to report back to the government and say, you know what, we've got some inefficiencies over here. We've got 20,000 people over here. We really could do that same job with 18. Can we move, maybe not always the people, but can we move those 2,000 extra positions over here where we're deficient in people? You and I had a conversation about home care. And the amount of money that's put into home care into this province. And I think home care is, as long as you can keep a person in the home, is starkly different in cost compared to when you put them in and institutionalize them or put them in the hospital. So, that's good money spent. Don't you think, you're outside of government right now, I'm outside of government, but don't you think then if there are challenges with home care, there's got to be enough waste somewhere in government that can be eliminated and those resources put into something?
Absolutely. I mean, that's what we need to be doing. I mean, and I'll go back to your comment about the job of an elected official is to watch the public purse, and I totally agree. Of course we do, but of course our job is also to make sure that we can provide programs.
Yes.
So that's where we have to be careful, and that's why we do need taxes, and it needs to be a fair system. But absolutely, and this is what Andrea's looking at. It's like taking away this waste, so that we expect to gain 600 million in waste in money that we found, and whether part of that is from actual government employees, I'm not sure. But why wouldn't we be looking at that? And we should be.
I think what she came up with, having a ministry of accountability, I think is a great idea. It keeps everybody on their toes.
Well, absolutely, and this is something that we wanted the Liberal government to do, and it didn't get started.
Well,
the other thing is,
are you surprised about that?
No, there's been a lot of promises, and again, this is why we got this election. There were three main promises that weren't kept: reducing home care, reducing health care insurance, and I can't remember the other one off the top of my head, but there's another one. And so then when you see all these promises that are made, it's like, wait a minute, we really can't keep doing this.
Yeah.
But the other thing that we are going to do in terms of waste, when you talk about government, is to cut the cabinet by a third.
Oh.
The interior cabinet, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Well, that'll save a few bucks as well.
It will.
Excuse me. Don Drummond
Yes.
came out with an interesting
Respectable
report.
man.
Was hired, a very bright guy,
Absolutely.
was hired by the Liberal government to come up with a list of cost-saving measures.
Yes.
Excuse me. He wasn't allowed to put in any more taxes. He had to spread it very thin. Those were the instructions he was given.
Yeah.
So, Don Drummond came out with 364 things to be done that could put the province back on track and see its deficit go away and start to pay down the debt.
Yeah.
And he said in his comment, because I had the opportunity to interview him, he said, if you adopt 363 of the 364, you must find one more that has better savings than the one you dropped. Because
Yeah.
what his forecast, as a financial wizard and expert for many, many years, is saying we are on the same trajectory as Greece was 20 years ago. And obviously we don't want to become what Greece was. So what are your thoughts on the Drummond report
yeah.
and maybe some of the things in there?
Yeah.
Or what would a Horwath government do to address some of those
One of the
concerns?
things is, I'm not sure we're not as far down that trajectory as it looks. We're 8th in the industrialized world, and we're doing better than the States or the UK. We're not doing as well as Norway or Sweden, so we're not that far down. And we do have a debt, whether we pay it back in 2018 or Andrea expects to pay it back by 2018. If it's 2020, so be it. I mean, the fact is, I think austerity is rather dangerous. I mean, I think sometimes people, we cut taxes. So far, we've had, 10 years of tax cuts, federally, more than that. And then what happens is, you don't have money for programs. All of a sudden, you don't have money for infrastructure. In Mississauga, they had so much of their infrastructure was paid for through development, but then once that's gone,
And is it
so
always
if
the
you
easy
keep
things
cutting-
to cut? Like, I can remember back when I was on city council in Cambridge, and we went to the administration of the day and we said, we got to find some cost savings. And of course, they came back with their recommendations.
Yeah.
God bless bureaucrats, we
Yeah.
need them. But they came back with knowing that the slate that they put of cuts that we wouldn't buy into because
Yeah.
they were things that we would want. But that's the choices they gave us. So, do you think that same type of thing could happen? That the bureaucracy just comes back and says, well, cut home care.
Yeah.
And you don't want to cut
No,
home
you
care.
can't.
But there's got to be things,
You can't.
Bobby. There's got to be things out there that can be cut.
There wasn't much that was implemented in this report.
No, I know.
Exactly.
I know.
That's what you're getting at, and I remember that.
Yeah. And you know what? I'm not saying that all of the 364 things that Don Drummond recommended are
yeah.
easy things to
I
implement.
know.
Freezing wages is tough for any government to do. You've got negotiated
Yeah.
contracts, you've got
Yeah.
all kinds of things.
Yeah.
So what he was saying was, that's fine. If you don't want that one, don't do that one.
Yeah.
But then you got to find something that's better.
Yeah. Well, see,
And-
my response to this is, and I'm going to go right back to Andrea Horwath and our MPP team that we're going to elect, and hopefully I'm going to be part of that, is that we are going to find waste. There's been so much waste. So we have to find that waste, and we have to put that money into what we've promised. And we've got some good promises. We're talking about cutting waits in half in ERs. We're talking about nurse practitioners, using more nurse practitioners, which is, I think, is a wonderful thing to do.
Do you think that's the core of this election, this particular election, is about wasteful government?
I think it's big. I think it's about broken promises, and it's about waste and scandal. I work for Family and Children's Services. I'm public sector. I'm honored by what I do. But when I've seen our agencies have cuts, which affects staff, you cut somebody's job, how do they support themselves? What about the morale? And it affects children and families because we're having to be tight. Kitchener-Waterloo, they had to close some group homes. So bottom line is, we did all that, and then we hear about waste and scandal.
Yeah.
And you think all those millions, billions of dollars, when people are tight budgets. Look at all the amazing social service agencies that need funding, that aren't getting what they need, and everybody's cutting. Look at the youth that need support and programs, and it's not there. Look at the home care. Look at the home care workers that aren't paid what they should be paid. The fact that the minimum wage, we'd love it to be higher. Yes, we're going to get it up to 12, and we're going to get it up when we can, but the bottom is, you have a huge segment of our population that is working poor. They don't qualify for Ontario Works or Ontario Disability. They don't have their dental benefits. They don't have drug benefits. We need pharmacare, national pharmacare. But bottom line is, you've got this working poor, and yeah, I'm on a roll now. You got me on a roll.
Well,
so when I
you
see
know,
the waste,
Yeah.
I would definitely say this. I mean, it's a minority government. As you know, minority governments can only live so long.
Yep.
This government has basically lived its course. It couldn't be supported any further. Andrea Horvath called this election because there were promises made, not kept, more promises being made, costing a lot of money, and then we have the waste and the scandal, and so it's, you know what, we can't trust you anymore. We really need to have a new government.
I think,
we need an NDP government is what we need.
You know, and I think
We need change.
Andrea has been very vocal of late, and you know, she was criticized a little bit by the old guard of the NDP for maybe being right of the Liberal Party, but you know, and I think she's coming out now fairly hard, saying, yeah, but you wanted me to support a government that was corrupt and scandalous, in
That's
her
right.
opinion. That's exactly
Yeah.
what she said.
That's right, that's right. And there are a lot of good items in our budget speaking to social justice. I mean, basically, the things that we all care about.
Yeah.
Education, healthcare, job creation, you know, the youth.
I watched your debate, and we're going off a script now, so I'm going to give you a couple more minutes to
Okay.
talk, just you.
Okay.
I thought the line of the night almost was the libertarian gentleman who was commenting on
Yes.
the last question about math and said
Oh, yes.
that you know, Rob Leone had said something about the math, and then I believe Catherine McGarry made some comment back, and then he came out with, well, I wish that we had better math skills in our politicians.
It was excellent. It was excellent.
You know, because I think that, you know, I guess from my perspective, sitting out here, you know, watching government work every single day, dealing with politicians of every political stripe, you know, I know that individually, most politicians are sincere and, you know, putting forward their effort to do the right thing that they could possibly do and work as hard. Many of them work 12, 14-hour days
they do,
routinely, and maybe even harder than that. And they get criticized for not working, but they're always working.
They work very hard.
But you know, that somebody somewhere has got to figure out the system so that politicians can really harness the bureaucracy and say, you're not going to waste our money. You know, we're here because we're watching our money that we've entrusted with you to do wise and efficient and effective things with. And, you know, somewhere down the line that's got to change. And people have got to be, you know, it's hard to say politicians be responsible for billions of dollars of waste, but they got to be ahead of that curve.
Yeah.
And they got to be watching where that
They
money's
do.
going and making decisions with the taxpayer, you know, in the foreground of those decisions.
Agreed. Agreed.
It's been a wonderful conversation, Bobbi.
Thank you. I've enjoyed myself.
Ladies and
Thank you
gentlemen,
very
you've
much.
just met Bobbi Stewart, the NDP candidate for Cambridge in this June 12th provincial election. It's not, you know, from the Chamber's perspective, it's not just a right, it's an obligation we feel you have to cast your ballot on June 12th. Bobbi, it's been great.
It's been great.
Thanks very much for
Thank you
coming in.
very much, Greg. Enjoyed myself.